Hello, my name is Philip. I'm one of the lecturers at 9.09er. In this video, we would be continuing our comparison of the two tests, the IELTS and the OET, this time in terms of the reading subtest. Specifically, we would be comparing them in four ways: the test format, the types of questions that you can expect to see, how you're scored, and the different policies for awarding marks. Let's get started. As you can imagine, because the IELTS is a general English test and the OET is a healthcare focused test, therefore you would be getting very different experiences when it comes to the reading subtest. For example, the IELTS has two versions: general training and academic. And unlike in the listening subtest, where both general training and academic get the same test, here they get very different tests. In general training, get social survival texts, 2 to 3 texts that are very short and are all about material that one needs to be able to read in order to survive in an English environment, such as, for example, notices, advertisements in the newspapers, and the like, focusing on information retrieval. Workplace survival texts follow. They get 2 texts for that. They focus on material that one can encounter at work. For example, job descriptions, task descriptions, contracts, etc. And finally, at the end, their most difficult texts, they get 1 that is about general reading. They come from magazines. They are more abstract and theoretical compared to the others. And it's the hardest test that they have. It's the hardest material that they would have to deal with. Increasing level of difficulty you see is the idea here. The same thing applies to academic. Academic gets 3 long texts about abstract and theoretical topics. Nothing, of course, that requires specialist knowledge, but nonetheless they are more advanced and longer compared to what are given to general training. On the other hand, the OET, there are no 2 versions, but there's only 1. So everyone who takes the OET gets 3 sections. The exam for both exams also lasts for 1 hour. But for the OET, this 1 hour is divided into 2. The first 15 minutes to do part A, and then the last 45 minutes to do parts B and C. Part A, you see, is where the exam measures the candidate's ability to read under time pressure, because healthcare professionals are time poor. When they do their jobs, they usually don't have a lot of time to do it, which means that there is reading that they need to perform quite rapidly indeed. So in part A, one is provided references that healthcare professionals, for example, need to consult quickly in the middle of their duties so that they can retrieve information at once, put the reference down, and then go back to work. And there are 4 texts that they would be given regarding one topic that would be of general interest and accessible to all the 12 professionals that OET is good for. After the 15 minutes are over, the papers are collected, so the candidate would be unable to go back to them anymore. And then the materials for parts B and C would be provided. Part B, these are workplace extracts. They are materials that one can encounter during duty. For example, emails from supervisors, quality control guidelines, infection control procedures, etc. Part C would contain the more detailed reads, longer texts about topic of general interest as well to the 12 professions that OET is good for, the hardest material that they would be presented with. There are different question types, and both the IELTS and the OET share quite a lot in common: form completion, sentence completion, and multiple choice, which means that it's important for candidates to know to write down the words exactly from the texts and to select from various options that are provided to them. For the IELTS, though, it has quite a lot more types of questions compared to the OET. There's plan, map, diagram labeling, matching headings, and quite distinctly, true, false, not given, or yes, no, not given. This is a type of question where a statement is given to the candidate and you have to determine, was the statement mentioned in the passage? Was the opposite of the statement was what was mentioned in the passage? Or was this never mentioned at all in the passage? Quite an experience, and very, very different compared to what is expected in the OET. Because scoring for both exams are different, one can expect this to apply to the reading subtest too. However, in the IELTS, because the academic and general training get very different experiences as well, in the sense that academic texts are harder and general texts are easier. Therefore, though the reading test is out of 40 for both academic and general training, the raw score that they need in order to get the same band score are very different. In general training have to score more in order to get the same band score as academic. For example, in academic, in order to get a 7.0, they need 30 out of 40. General training, though, they need to get a 34 to get the same band score. For the OET, the OET reading test is out of 42. And usually, meaning not all the time, candidates need to get a 30 to get a B, which is the grade that most people are required to get. Now, similarly to the listening subtests, for the reading subtest for both tests, these grades, these numbers are not set in stone. The equivalence depends on how difficult the version of the exam is that the candidate gets. Because though both the IELTS and the OET exert quite a lot of effort to ensure that their materials are standard, it's a similar experience no matter where and when the candidate takes the exams. Sometimes the version of the exam that they get is harder than usual or easier than usual. So to ensure that everyone has equal footing, is on a level playing field, both IELTS and the OET adjust these equivalences. So for example, in OET, if the exam version that they get is harder than usual, maybe to get a B, they just need to get a 29 or a 28. However, if it's easier than usual, then maybe they would need to get a 31 or a 32. This helps ensure that whenever and wherever candidates take the exam, and whether or not the version that they get is easier than usual, harder than usual, or average, they get a fair experience so that they are not disadvantaged or advantaged because of this. So something to keep in mind, and that is meant to reassure candidates of how fair both exams are. Finally, when it comes to marking, the IELTS and the OET share quite a lot in common. First of all caps is fine. Some people, this is how they write in their everyday lives. And forcing them to write differently would slow them down, which would be an unfair advantage, or rather an unfair disadvantage. So all caps is fine. Similarly, 100% accuracy is when it comes to spelling is required. After all, the answer is written down, and candidates just need to copy paste it. So no allowances for wrong spelling. And to reiterate the point, it's important to write what you read in the passage. No abbreviations, no paraphrasing, no changing of the grammar, nothing. What is written down in the passage, this is what the candidates must write down as answers. Similarly, just like in listening, one must not write down as answers words that are part of the question. There would always be a match between the keywords of the question and the keywords of the passage. This is how the candidates know that this is the answer. So these are not meant to be answers, but rather they're meant to be hints or guides, these paired keywords. So please do not include words that are already in the question. However, in the IELTS test, when candidates have to write down words as answers, it's important to always keep in mind the number of words allowed. Write no more than one word, or write no more than two words. If the candidate exceeds this maximum, then no marks are awarded. The OET, for the OET, for those taking the paper-based test, just like in listening, it's important to shade the bubbles appropriately. Because for reading parts B and C, it's multiple choice. And it's not a human being, but rather a computer that checks your answers. So the computer relies on you shading the bubbles appropriately using your pencil, meaning shading the bubble completely and making no stray marks into the area of the other bubbles, so that the computer doesn't think that you have two answers for the same number, which would result in you not getting a mark. Hopefully this video comparing these two exams in terms of the reading subtest has been helpful in making you have a more informed decision on which of these exams is the better fit for you.